Jed Harper's gang ruled the Montana Territory through brutal efficiency, their names spoken in whispers from Cedar Creek to Willow Creek. They'd built their empire on broken bones and burning homesteads, leaving no witnesses, no survivors. Until the night they made the mistake that would echo through Western legend for generations to come. They kidnapped Sarah McAllister. They saw what they wanted to see: a pregnant rancher's wife, 8 months heavy with child, an easy target to break her husband's defiance. What they couldn't see was the serpent coiled behind her gentle smile. The same deadly force that had haunted outlaw nightmares for a decade as the most feared bounty hunter ever to ride the territories. The woman who dismantled the infamous Davidson gang single-handedly, leaving no one alive to tell the tale. The legend they called the Scarlet Viper, because her strike was as swift as it was lethal, and her venom knew no cure. Now, bound and surrounded by the territory's most vicious killers in their remote mountain fortress, Sarah McAllister is exactly where she intends to be. Because sometimes justice requires patience. Sometimes it takes a viper's strike to cleanse a territory of its poison. And Jed Harper's gang is about to learn why. Even years after she disappeared, the mere whisper of her name still makes hardened outlaws reach for their guns in the dark of night. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The morning sun crawls across the rugged landscape of Montana Territory, painting long shadows across weathered rock formations and sparse grasslands. A gentle breeze carries the scent of sage and prairie flowers across the valley, where a modest ranch stands as a testament to human perseverance in this untamed land. The McAllister Ranch, though humble, bears the marks of careful tending: neat fence lines, well-maintained buildings, and the quiet bustle of livestock going about their morning routines. Sarah McAllister moves among her chickens with practiced ease, her swollen belly preceding her as she scatters feed across the yard. The birds cluck and peck eagerly around her feet, and she hums a soft lullaby, one hand occasionally resting on her stomach as if sharing the melody with her unborn child. Her dark hair is tied back practically, but a few strands have escaped to dance in the morning breeze, catching the golden light. "There you go, ladies," she murmurs to the chickens, a gentle smile playing across her lips. "Fresh feed for fresh eggs. That's our bargain, isn't it?" From the nearby paddock, the sound of hammering punctuates the peaceful morning. Ethan McAllister works steadily at mending a broken fence post, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-bronzed arms. Despite the early hour, sweat already glistens on his brow. He pauses in his work, straightening to watch Sarah with undisguised affection. "You spoil those chickens something fierce, Sarah," he calls out, grinning. "Pretty soon they'll be expecting silver platters for their feed." Sarah's laugh rings clear across the yard. "And what if they do? They're better company than some folks in town, and twice as useful." Their neighbor, old Jim Wheeler, rides up to the fence line where Ethan works. His weather-beaten face crinkles with amusement at their banter. "Morning, folks." "Ethan, that fence giving you trouble again?" "Morning, Jim." Ethan wipes his brow with a kerchief. "Same post as always. Ground's too rocky here to get it set proper, but we make do." Jim dismounts, tying his horse to a sturdy part of the fence. "Ranch life ain't never been easy, but seems like it's getting harder these days." He lowers his voice, though Sarah is well out of earshot. "Heard anything more about those troubles over in Cedar Creek?" Ethan's expression darkens slightly. "Nothing concrete. Just whispers and worried faces." He drives another nail into the post with perhaps more force than necessary. "How's Martha holding up after that fever?" "Better now, thank the Lord. Though I reckon we wouldn't have made it through without your Sarah's healing tea." Jim glances toward the chicken yard. "You got yourself a special one there, Ethan. Never seen someone take to ranch life so natural-like, especially coming from back east." Ethan's face softens as he watches Sarah head toward the barn. "That I do, Jim. That I do." Inside the barn, Sarah busies herself with morning chores, her movements efficient and purposeful. She pauses at one of the horse stalls, where their stallion Thunder paws restlessly at the ground. "Easy there, big fellow," she soothes, running her hand along his neck. Her practiced eye catches a loose shoe, and without hesitation, she retrieves the necessary tools from their precise locations on the wall. Ethan enters the barn, just as Sarah finishes securing the horseshoe, her movements quick and assured. He watches with quiet surprise as she pats Thunder's flank and rises smoothly, despite her condition. "Where'd you learn to do that?" he asks, genuine curiosity in his voice. Sarah's hands still for just a moment before she begins putting the tools away. "Oh, you pick things up here and there. A girl's got to be useful on a ranch, doesn't she?" Ethan steps closer, wrapping his arms around her from behind. "You're more than useful. You're miraculous. But I need to head into town. We've got those cattle to sell, and supplies are running low." He places a gentle kiss on her temple. "You sure you'll be all right here?" Sarah turns in his arms, her expression warm but somehow distant. "Of course. I've got plenty to keep me busy." She straightens his collar with familiar affection. "Just be careful in town, Ethan. Things haven't felt right lately." The town of Willow Creek greets Ethan with unusual silence. The normally bustling main street seems subdued, with people hurrying about their business rather than stopping to chat. Outside the general store, Mrs. Peterson practically drags her young son inside when she spots a group of rough-looking strangers lounging near the saloon. Inside the store, Stanley Wright, the proprietor, is notably less jovial than usual as he helps Ethan gather supplies. "Heard about your cattle sale, Ethan. Good timing, getting them to market now." "Something wrong with the timing, Stan?" Ethan asks, noting the man's nervous glances toward the door. Stanley lowers his voice. "Jed Harper's gang has been spotted in these parts. They've already hit 3 settlements north of here, demanding protection money. They call it running off those who won't pay." "Harper?" Ethan's jaw tightens. "Thought he usually stayed up near the Dakota Territory. Territory's getting too hot for him there, way I heard it. Now he's moving south, looking for easier pickings." Stanley begins wrapping Ethan's purchases with shaking hands. Just be careful, Ethan. Man like that," he dashed. The door crashes open, cutting off Stanley's warning. A group of men saunters in, their spurs jingling ominously against the wooden floor. Their leader, a tall man with a shock of graying hair and a cruel twist to his mouth, surveys the store like a wolf sizing up a henhouse. "Well, ain't this cozy?" His voice carries the rasp of whiskey and tobacco. "Name's Jed Harper. Perhaps you've heard of me." Stanley's face goes pale. "Mr. Harper, we don't want any trouble." "Trouble?" Harper's laugh is without humor. "Why, we're here to prevent trouble. Ain't that right, boys?" His men chuckle on cue. "Small fee for our services, of course. Insurance, you might say." Ethan steps forward, his voice steady. "This town already has a sheriff for protection, Harper." Harper's eyes fix on Ethan with dangerous interest. "And you are?" "Ethan McAllister. I ranch outside of town." "Ah, a rancher." Harper circles Ethan slowly. "Man of the earth. Honest work for honest pay. That right?" His tone grows mocking. "But you see, Mr. McAllister, honest work is for honest times. These ain't honest times anymore. The land belongs to those who work it," Ethan responds firmly. "Not to thieves who prey on honest folk." A dangerous silence falls over the store. Harper's men tense, hands hovering near their weapons. But their leader merely smiles, a gesture that never reaches his eyes. "Strong words, Mr. McAllister. Very strong words." Harper moves closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But strong words won't protect your land, won't protect your home, won't protect your family." Ethan's fists clench at his sides, but he holds his ground. "Is that a threat, Harper? A threat?" Harper spreads his hands in mock innocence. No. Just a friendly warning from one man to another. Times are changing, McAllister. Best make sure you change with them." He turns to leave, then pauses. "We'll be collecting our first payment at the end of the week. Do think carefully about your position." Back at the ranch, Sarah stands in the gathering dusk, her eyes fixed on the ground near the barn. Fresh hoof prints mar the soft earth, prints she knows don't belong to any of their horses. Her hand unconsciously moves to her belly as she studies the signs of intrusion. Something moves in the shadows of the trees at the edge of their property. Sarah's posture changes subtly, her movements becoming more measured, more alert. She makes her way back to the house with unhurried steps, but her eyes never stop scanning the growing darkness. Inside, she retrieves a small key from around her neck and opens a locked chest in their bedroom. Inside, wrapped in soft cloth, lies a gun belt with twin revolvers. Her fingers trace the worn leather almost longingly before she closes the chest again, locking away more than just weapons. The sound of approaching hoofbeats brings her to the window. Relief floods her face as she recognizes Ethan's form in the twilight. But her relief is short-lived as more riders emerge from the shadows behind him. The night erupts in violence. Horses scream, and men shout as Harper's gang surrounds the house. Ethan barely has time to shout a warning before a blow from behind sends him crashing to the ground. Sarah moves with surprising speed despite her condition, but she's caught between protecting Ethan and reaching her weapons. A burly gang member grabs her arm, and she instinctively twists in a way that should have broken his grip, then catches herself, remembering her role. Well, Harper's voice cuts through the chaos as he dismounts. Mrs. McAllister, I presume? Your husband's quite the principled man. He steps over Ethan's unconscious form. Let's see if we can't convince him to be more reasonable. As the gang drags her toward their horses, Sarah maintains an unusual calm. Her eyes take in every face, every weapon, every detail of their movements. When Harper roughly pulls her onto his horse, she allows a small smile to play across her lips, one that would have worried him greatly had he noticed it. You're awfully quiet for a woman being kidnapped, Harper notes as they ride away from the ranch. Screaming won't help me, Mr. Harper, Sarah responds evenly. And I suspect you'll learn soon enough that there are far worse things to fear than silence. Harper laughs, taking her words as the empty bravado of a frightened woman. But in the moonlight, Sarah's eyes hold a dangerous gleam, the look of a predator biding its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The cold dawn air bites at Sarah's skin as Jed Harper's gang thunders across the open prairie. Her hands are bound with rough rope, and she bounces uncomfortably on the saddle in front of Harper. Around them, a dozen men ride in loose formation, their faces hard and weather-beaten beneath wide-brimmed hats. Sarah's eyes never stop moving, taking in every detail of her captors. To her left rides Snake-Eye Martinez, Harper's chief enforcer, his face bearing a distinctive scar that pulls at his left eye. He carries 2 revolvers and moves with the fluid grace of a practiced gunman. Behind them, brothers Ben and Luke Whitaker bicker constantly, their attention wavering from their surroundings. Easy marks, Sarah notes. Careful with them reins, Hank. Harper bellows at a hulking man struggling with a spirited bay horse. You're supposed to be my lieutenant, not some green ranch hand. Hank Reynolds yanks harder on the reins, his face flushing with embarrassment. Horse is crazy, boss. Needs to be put down if you ask me. Nobody asked you, Harper spits. Just like nobody asked your opinion about our latest venture. Sarah files away this hint of discord, watching as Hank's jaw clenches in barely contained anger. The gang's hierarchy isn't as stable as it appears. A young man, barely out of his teens, rides closer to Harper's horse. Mr. Harper, sir? His voice cracks slightly. Maybe we should stop soon? The lady being in her condition and all. Harper turns in his saddle, fixing the boy with a cold stare. You turning soft on me, Tom? First you questioned taking her. Now you're worried about her comfort. No, sir. I just dashed. Tom Reeves glances at Sarah's swollen belly. My sister was expecting last year, and the doctor said too much riding could dash. Shut your mouth. Harper's voice cracks like a whip. Your sister ain't here, and this ain't no social call. We're running a business, boy. The sooner you learn that, the longer you'll live. Tom falls back, his young face clouded with shame and uncertainty. Sarah catches his eye briefly, offering a small smile of gratitude. He quickly looks away, but she's marked him as different from the others, someone whose conscience might still be reached. As the morning wears on, Sarah begins to slump in the saddle, her breathing becoming labored. Please, she calls out, her voice weak. I need to rest. The baby. Keep riding, Harper growls, but Sarah feels him shift uncomfortably behind her. Boss, Snake-Eye speaks up, we've been pushing hard since dawn. Horses could use a break too. Harper considers this for a moment, then jerks his head toward a stand of cottonwood trees near a small creek. Fine. 10 minutes. While the gang waters their horses, Sarah sits beneath a tree, one hand resting protectively on her belly. Her eyes, however, are busy mapping the terrain. The creek runs north to south, its banks lined with rocky outcroppings that could provide cover. To the east, rolling hills offer multiple routes for anyone trying to escape or pursue. Tom approaches hesitantly with a canteen. "Ma'am? Thought you might be thirsty." "Thank you, Tom." Sarah drinks deeply, noting how the other gang members are spread out, some dozing, others playing cards. "Poor discipline." "You're very kind." "It ain't right," Tom mutters, glancing around. "Taking a woman in your condition. My ma would tan my hide if she knew." Before Sarah can respond, gunfire erupts from the hills. Bullets kick up dirt around them as a rival gang, the notorious Carson brothers, launches their attack. "Ambush!" Snake Eye yells, diving for cover. Carson's boys. Chaos erupts as horses rear and men scramble for weapons. Harper curses, firing wildly at the hillside while trying to reach better position. Sarah rolls behind a fallen log, her bound hands making movement awkward. "Tom," she calls out to the young outlaw frozen in panic nearby. "Cut me loose. I can help." Tom hesitates only a moment before slicing through her bonds. Sarah immediately grabs his rifle, checking the action with practiced ease. "Stay down." Her first shot drops a Carson gang member trying to flank their position. Her second catches another in the shoulder as he runs for better cover. Each shot is precise, economical, betraying years of experience. "Hank," she shouts to Harper's lieutenant, "get the horses behind the rocks. They're trying to steal our mounts." Her commanding tone brings instant obedience, Hank rushing to secure their escape route. The firefight rages for several minutes, but Sarah's tactical directions and deadly accuracy help turn the tide. When the last of Carson's men retreat into the hills, leaving 3 dead behind, an eerie silence falls over the creek. Harper stares at Sarah, his expression unreadable. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" "My father was a hunter," Sarah lies smoothly. "Taught me to defend myself. Lots of dangerous men in these territories." "A hunter," Harper repeats slowly, clearly unconvinced. But after a moment, he laughs. "Well, ain't that fortunate for us? Looks like we got ourselves a guardian angel, boys." The gang laughs nervously, but Sarah notices several of them eyeing her with new respect and wariness. Particularly Hank, whose thoughtful gaze follows her as they mount up to continue their journey. As they ride through the afternoon, Sarah begins working subtle magic on the gang's dynamics. "That was quick thinking with the horses, Hank," she calls out. "Shame no one listened when you suggested posting lookouts at the last stop." Harper's head snaps around. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, I just overheard Hank telling Snake Eye it might be wise to have someone watching the high ground," Sarah says innocently. "Given all the rival gangs in these parts." A muscle twitches in Harper's jaw. "That right, Hank? You questioning my leadership now?" "No, boss, I just dashed. Just thinking you could do better, maybe." The tension crackles between them as Sarah watches, satisfied. Seeds of doubt, once planted, have a way of growing wild. That evening, around the campfire, Sarah finds herself seated next to Tom, who's been assigned to guard her. The young man's hand shakes slightly as he offers her a plate of beans. "Your sister," Sarah says softly. "The one who was expecting? Did everything turn out all right?" Tom's face brightens. "Yes, ma'am. Little girl named Rose. Pretty as a picture. You must miss them." Sarah glances around the fire at the hard-faced men. "This can't be the life your mother wanted for you." "It ain't," Tom admits. "But times were hard after Pa died. Mr. Harper offered good money. Said it would just be running protection for traders." He stares into the fire. "Didn't mention nothing about hurting folks." Sarah places a gentle hand on his arm. "There's always another way, Tom. Always a chance to change course. Anyone else feeding you lies about better lives?" Harper's voice cuts through the darkness as he approaches the fire. "Gather round, boys. Mrs. McAllister here's going to tell us all about herself." Sarah meets his challenging stare calmly. "Not much to tell, Mr. Harper. Grew up in Boston, daughter of a hunting guide. Met Ethan when he came east on business. Fell in love with him and the idea of ranch life." She smiles disarmingly. "Simple as that?" "Simple as that," Harper echoes mockingly. "And I suppose your pa taught you to shoot like a soldier too?" "Better than a soldier," Sarah replies, her voice taking on an edge. "Soldiers waste ammunition." The gang shifts uncomfortably at her tone, but Harper just laughs. "You're something else, Mrs. McAllister. Something else entirely. As the men settle in for the night, Sarah sits awake, memorizing their location. They've been traveling southwest, following game trails and old Indian paths. The terrain has grown increasingly rocky, with steep cliffs and hidden valleys perfect for concealing a hideout. Just before dawn, they crest a ridge, and Sarah gets her first look at their destination. An abandoned fort sits nestled against sheer cliff walls, its adobe walls crumbling in places. A natural spring provides water, and the surrounding canyon offers only two obvious approaches, both easily defended. But Sarah's trained eye spots the weaknesses immediately. The west wall has deteriorated badly, creating potential blind spots in their defense. The stables are too close to the main building, meaning a fire there could quickly spread. And the lookout posts are poorly positioned, leaving gaps in their coverage. "Home sweet home," Harper announces with mock grandeur. "Hope you'll find it comfortable, Mrs. McAllister. You'll be our guest for quite some time." Sarah allows herself to be led inside, noting every detail, the number of men, the placement of weapons, the guard rotations. Her hand brushes her belly as she thinks of Ethan, hoping he's recovered from the attack. But she can't afford to worry about him now. She has work to do. "This way," Tom says, leading her to a small room with a barred window. "It ain't much, but it's shelter." "Thank you, Tom." Sarah surveys her new prison. "It'll do just fine." As the door closes behind her, Sarah begins to plan. She's been in worse situations, faced longer odds. These men think they've captured a helpless rancher's wife, but they've brought something far more dangerous into their midst. They've brought the Scarlet Viper into their den. Standing at the window, Sarah watches the gang go about their routines, cataloging every movement, every pattern, every weakness. Her lips curve in a small, dangerous smile. Harper wanted to make an example of the McAllisters. He's about to learn a harsh lesson about choosing the wrong targets. A cool breeze carries the scent of sage through the bars, and Sarah begins to hum softly, the same lullaby she sang to her chickens just yesterday morning. But now the gentle tune carries a different weight, like the calm before a storm. In the courtyard below, Harper gives orders to his men, unaware that his prisoner is already several steps ahead of him in a game he doesn't even know he's playing. Sarah's fingers tap quietly against the windowsill, counting guards, measuring distances, calculating odds. The sun sets behind the canyon walls, throwing long shadows across the fort. Sarah settles onto the thin mattress they provided, one hand resting protectively over her unborn child. "Don't worry, little one," she whispers. "Your mother's got everything under control." Outside her door, Tom takes up his guard position, torn between duty and doubt. In the main hall, Harper drinks with his lieutenants, celebrating their successful kidnapping. And in her small cell, Sarah McAllister, the legendary Scarlet Viper, begins to weave a web that will bring this entire operation crashing down around their ears. Pain pulses through Ethan McAllister's head as consciousness slowly returns. The cool morning dew has soaked through his shirt, and for a moment, he can't remember why he's lying in the dirt of his own front yard. Then memory crashes over him like ice water. The ambush, the struggle, Sarah's calm face as Harper's men dragged her away. "Sarah!" He staggers to his feet, the world spinning around him. "Sarah!" But only silence answers his desperate calls. The ranch is eerily quiet in the gray dawn light, chickens scattered, the front door hanging off its hinges. Inside, the house bears signs of the struggle. Overturned furniture, a broken lamp, Sarah's shawl lying crumpled on the floor. Ethan's legs give out, and he sinks into Sarah's rocking chair, her half-finished baby blanket still draped over the arm. His hands shake as he picks it up, the soft yarn now spotted with his tears. "I'm sorry," he whispers. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I should have protected you. I should have." But self-pity won't bring her back. Forcing himself to his feet, Ethan saddles his fastest horse and rides hard for town, his head still throbbing from the blow that had taken him down. Willow Creek Sheriff's Office is a modest building on the main street, its weathered sign creaking in the morning breeze. Sheriff Daniel Morton looks up from his desk as Ethan bursts in, his face already setting into a mask of resignation. "Harper took her," Ethan gasps out. "They took Sarah. You have to help me get her back." Morton removes his reading glasses slowly, setting them aside with deliberate care. Sit down, Ethan. Take a breath. We don't have time to sit. They've got my pregnant wife. And what exactly do you expect me to do about it? Morton's voice is tired, defeated. I've got 2 deputies, both green as spring grass. Harper's got at least 15 men, all killers. Ethan slams his hands on the desk. You're the law. The law. Morton laughs bitterly. The law stops at the edge of civilization, son. Out here, it's just men with guns, and Harper's got more of them than we do. So you'll do nothing? Let them get away with this? Morton stands, his chair scraping against the wooden floor. I'm trying to keep this town alive, Ethan. You think Harper won't burn Willow Creek to the ground if we chase after him? You think he won't kill every man, woman, and child here just to make a point? And what about Sarah? What about our baby? The sheriff's eyes soften with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry, Ethan. Truly. But sometimes we have to accept that dash. Accept? Ethan's voice cracks. Accept that my wife is gone? That our child might never. He turns away, unable to finish the thought. Back at the ranch, Ethan begins writing letters with shaking hands. Sarah had mentioned friends back east, though she'd never gone into detail about them. He addresses letters to every name he can remember her mentioning, every city she'd spoken of. The letters are desperate, pleading things, filled with his fear and love and determination. Please, he writes. If you knew Sarah, if you were a friend, we need help. She's in danger, and I can't save her alone. Days pass in a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. Ethan maintains the ranch mechanically, knowing Sarah would want him to care for their animals, their home. But his eyes constantly scan the horizon, hoping for any response to his letters. A week after Sarah's kidnapping, a stranger rides onto the ranch. The man is tall and weathered, with gray-streaked hair and a face that's seen too much violence. A well-worn Winchester rifle is slung across his saddle, and his eyes miss nothing as he surveys the property. You Ethan McAllister? His voice is gravel and whiskey. I am. Ethan straightens, noting the man's professional bearing. And you are? Nameswell Hawkins. Got your letter about Sarah. He dismounts smoothly despite his age. Though you clearly don't know who you're looking for. What do you mean? Sarah's my wife. We've been married almost a year. Will's laugh is short and harsh. Your wife? Boy, do you have any idea who Sarah really is? She's Sarah McAllister, Ethan insists. She's carrying our child. She's kind and strong and dashed. She's the Scarlet Viper. We'll cut him off. Most dangerous gunslinger west of the Mississippi. At least, she was before she disappeared 2 years ago. Ethan stares at him, waiting for the joke. But Will's expression remains deadly serious. That's impossible. Sarah's from Boston. Her father was a hunting guide. Her father was killed by outlaws when she was 16. Will corrects him. She spent the next 10 years hunting down every last man responsible. Became a legend in the process. Some say she's killed more men than cholera. Ethan sinks onto a nearby barrel, his world tilting sideways. No, you're wrong. Sarah is gentle. She sings to the chickens. She's learning to make preserves. She's also the fastest draw I've ever seen. Will continues relentlessly. And smart as a whip. We rode together for a while, hunting bounties. Then one day, she just vanished. Now I know why. He looks around the ranch with new appreciation. She was building a different life. Memories flash through Ethan's mind. Sarah's inexplicable skill with horses, her precise movements, the way she always seemed to know when strangers were near. Why didn't she tell me? Would you have looked at her the same way if you'd known? Will asks quietly. Would you have seen past the blood on her hands to the woman underneath? The question hits Ethan like a physical blow. He thinks of Sarah's smile, her laugh, the way she touches her growing belly with such wonder and love. It doesn't matter, he says finally. Whatever she was, whoever she is, she's my wife. And I'm going to bring her home. Will nods approvingly. That's why I'm here. But we'll need help. Harper's gang isn't just any group of outlaws. They're killers, every last one of them. Over the next few days, Will and Ethan ride through the nearby settlements, carefully choosing their allies. Old Jim Wheeler volunteers immediately, his weathered face set with determination. Sarah saved my Martha's life, he says simply. Time to return the favor. In town, they find unexpected support from Stanley Wright, the shopkeeper. I'm tired of living in fear, he declares, pulling a shotgun from beneath his counter. Besides, I got 3 daughters. What kind of man would I be if I didn't stand up for a woman in trouble? A drifter named Jackson Cole joins them after hearing their story in the saloon. His eyes are hard but honest. Rode with Harper once, he admits. Man's a rabid dog. Needs to be put down. Will begins training their small band immediately, setting up targets behind the ranch. Ethan, who's never fired anything more dangerous than a varmint rifle, struggles with the heavy revolver. Relax your grip, Will instructs, adjusting Ethan's stance. You're not trying to strangle it. Let the gun become part of your arm. Days blur together as Ethan learns to shoot, to ride hard, to track. His soft rancher's hands develop calluses from endless practice with rope and reins. Will drives them mercilessly, knowing their lives will depend on these skills. Again, Will barks as Ethan misses another target. Your wife's out there somewhere, counting on you. You think Harper's men are going to wait while you take careful aim? Ethan reloads, his arms trembling with exhaustion. But each time he wants to quit, he thinks of Sarah, fierce, beautiful Sarah, who's been so much stronger than he ever knew. The next shot strikes dead center. Better, Will grudgingly admits. Now do it faster. In the evenings, Will shares stories of the Scarlet Viper's exploits, and Ethan begins to see how Sarah's 2 lives fit together. Her gentle strength, her quiet competence, her deep compassion, they weren't a mask, but the core of who she truly is. She never wanted the killing, Will explains one night by the fire. But she believed in justice, in protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Every man she took down had earned their fate many times over. Why did she stop? Ethan asks. Why choose this life instead? Will stares into the flames. Because killing, even for the right reasons, takes something from you. Sarah was smart enough to walk away before it took everything. He looks at Ethan meaningfully. She chose love over vengeance. That's rare in our line of work. Their lucky break comes from an unexpected source. Mrs. Peterson, the timid woman from the general store, approaches them secretly one evening. My boy Bobby was playing up in the hills, she whispers, glancing around nervously. He saw riders heading southwest, following the old Apache trail. Said one was a woman, looked to be expecting. Will's eyes light up. The boy's sure about the direction? Mrs. Peterson nods. Bobby's got a good head for details. Takes after his father, God rest his soul. The next morning, their small posse sets out. Besides Ethan and Will, they number 6 men, Jim Wheeler, Stanley Wright, Jackson Cole, and 3 hard-eyed drifters who will vouch as 4. Not an army, but each man is committed to the cause. The weather turns against them almost immediately. Cold rain soaks them to the bone as they follow the treacherous mountain trails. Twice they lose the track completely, forcing them to backtrack through dangerous territory. Harper's men pass through here, Will announces, examining scattered campfire ashes. 3, maybe 4 days ahead of us. Will we catch them? Ethan asks, fighting to keep the desperation from his voice. They're not trying to hide their trail, Will responds. They think no one's foolish enough to follow them. That's our advantage. That night, huddled around a small fire in the shelter of a rock overhang, Ethan pulls out Sarah's half-finished baby blanket. He's carried it with him, a reminder of everything at stake. I swear to you, Sarah, he whispers, his words carried away by the wind. I'm coming for you. I don't care what it takes, what I have to become. I'll bring you home. Will watches him from across the fire, seeing the transformation taking place. The soft-spoken rancher is still there, but tempered now with steel. Like a blade being forged, Ethan is becoming something new, something stronger. Get some rest, Will advises. Tomorrow we enter Harper's territory. Every man needs to be sharp. Ethan nods, but his eyes remain fixed on the distant mountains where his wife is being held. The same mountains that have sheltered outlaws and renegades for generations are about to witness something new. A love strong enough to overcome any obstacle. A determination fierce enough to move heaven and earth. As the fire dies down, Ethan's hand moves to the revolver at his hip. The weight of it no longer feels strange. Like his newfound knowledge of Sarah's past, It's become part of him, changing him in ways he's only beginning to understand. "I'm not the man you married, Sarah," he murmurs into the darkness. "But I hope I'm becoming the man you need me to be." The wind carries a hint of sage on it, reminding him of Sarah's garden back home. Somewhere out there, she's waiting, perhaps planning her own escape. The legendary Scarlet Viper and his beloved wife, two sides of the same remarkable woman. And Ethan McAllister, no longer just a simple rancher, has vowed to move heaven and earth to bring her home. The mountains loom ahead, their peaks lost in gathering storm clouds. Tomorrow they'll press deeper into Harper's territory, where every shadow might hide an ambush, every ridge might conceal a gunman. But Ethan welcomes the danger now. Each step brings him closer to Sarah, and he'll face whatever challenges lie ahead with the same quiet strength she's always shown. The transformation from peaceful rancher to determined warrior is complete. Ethan McAllister has found his true purpose, and nothing, not Harper's gang, not the elements, not even his own former limitations, will stop him from reaching Sarah. Jed Harper paces the weathered floorboards of his office in the old fort, his boots wearing an endless path as he puzzles over his peculiar prisoner. Through the grimy window, he watches Sarah in the courtyard, calmly speaking with several gang members as if she were hosting a social gathering rather than being held captive. "Something ain't right about that woman," he mutters, taking another pull from his whiskey bottle. The memory of her shooting during the Carson gang's ambush keeps playing in his mind. Too precise, too practiced for a rancher's wife. "Snake Eye," he bellows suddenly. The scarred enforcer appears in the doorway, hand habitually resting on his gun. "Take Rogers and head back toward Willow Creek. I want to know everything about Mrs. McAllister." "Everything? Boss, that's a 3-day ride each way," Snake Eye protests. "What about the Carson gang? They won't try nothing for a while, not after that beating they took." Harper's eyes narrow. Something about her story don't add up, and I aim to find out what. As Snake Eye and Rogers ride out, Sarah continues her subtle work among the gang. She sits in the shade of the fort's walls, mending a torn shirt for young Tom, while Hank Reynolds watches from nearby. "Your stitching's mighty fine, ma'am," Tom says admiringly. "Just like surgery," Sarah responds casually. "Though I suppose bullet wounds need steadier hands than torn cloth." Hank's head snaps up. "What would you know about bullet wounds?" Sarah's needle never falters. "More than I'd like, Mr. Reynolds. More than I'd like." The days crawl by, and Harper's paranoia grows. He catches Sarah studying the fort's defenses, notices how she takes mental notes of guard rotations and weapons caches. When confronted, she merely smiles that maddeningly calm smile. "Just trying to understand my new home, Mr. Harper," she says sweetly, "since you seem determined to keep me here." A week after their departure, Snake Eye and Rogers return at full gallop, their horses lathered with sweat. Harper meets them in the stables, away from prying eyes. "Well," he demands. Snake Eye's good eye is wide with disbelief. "Boss, you ain't gonna believe this. That woman in there? She ain't just some rancher's wife. She's the Scarlet Viper." Harper's whiskey bottle slips from his fingers, shattering on the stable floor. "The Viper? You're sure?" "Talked to a fellow in Cedar Creek who used to ride with her," Rogers adds. "Description matches perfect. Said she disappeared 2 years ago, but there's no mistaking it." Harper's mind races. The Scarlet Viper, legendary gunslinger, notorious bounty hunter, the woman who'd single-handedly brought down the Davidson gang. And she's been sitting in his fort for weeks, watching, waiting. "Boss," Snake Eye prompts. "What do we do?" "She's killed more men than Dash. She's also 8 months pregnant," Harper interrupts, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "And we've got her husband's life to hold over her." "No, boys, this ain't a problem. It's an opportunity." The next morning, Harper calls the entire gang to the fort's courtyard. Sarah is brought out, noting the changed atmosphere immediately. The gang members look at her differently now, with a mix of fear and awe. "Mrs. McAllister," Harper announces loudly. "Or should I say, the Scarlet Viper?" A murmur runs through the assembled men. Sarah's expression doesn't change, but her eyes grow harder, colder. "I wondered how long it would take you," she says quietly. "You've been holding out on us," Harper continues. "All this time, we thought we had a helpless rancher's wife. Instead, We've got ourselves the most notorious gunslinger in the territory. Sarah corrects him. I left that life behind. Did you now? Harper gestures to one of his men, who brings forward a gun belt with twin revolvers. Let's see if you've lost your touch. Boys, set up some targets. The gang scrambles to arrange bottles and cans along the fort's wall. Sarah stands perfectly still, her hand resting on her swollen belly. I don't do that anymore, she says firmly. Harper's voice turns ugly. Your husband's still out there, remember? Be a shame if something happened to him because his wife was feeling uncooperative. Sarah's eyes flash dangerously, but she takes the offered guns. The familiar weight of them sends a jolt through her arms, awakening muscle memories she tried to bury. The bottles first, Harper commands. Then we'll make it interesting. Sarah sighs, then moves like lightning. 6 shots ring out in rapid succession, each bottle exploding into fragments. Before anyone can react, she's turned and hit 6 more targets on the opposite wall. The gang stares in stunned silence at her display of speed and accuracy. Happy? She asks Harper coldly. But Harper's cruel smile only widens. Oh, we're just getting started. You see, the Carson gang's been a thorn in my side for too long. With you leading the charge, Dash. No. Sarah's voice cuts like a whip. No. Harper laughs. I don't think you understand your position, Viper. You work for me now, or Dash, or what? Sarah steps closer, her pregnancy doing nothing to diminish her dangerous presence. You'll kill my husband? Then you lose your leverage. Kill me? Then you lose your weapon. Face it, Harper. You need me more than I need you. The gang watches this exchange with growing uncertainty. Hank Reynolds, in particular, studies Sarah with newfound respect. Nobody says no to me. Harper backhands Sarah across the face, but she barely flinches. Then I guess I'm nobody. She replies evenly, a thin line of blood at the corner of her mouth. I won't be your attack dog, Harper. Those days are done. As Sarah is led back to her room, the gang breaks into worried whispers. Her reputation alone is enough to make some of them consider desertion. The Scarlet Viper's exploits are legendary. The massacre at Thunder Canyon, the siege of Fort Bradley, the hunt for the Davidson gang. Later that evening, Hank approaches Sarah's door, dismissing the guard with a gesture. That thing you did today, he says through the bars. Never seen shooting like that. You could, Sarah responds quietly. Harper's holding you back, Hank. A man with your potential should be leading, not following. Hank shifts uncomfortably. Harper's got the men's loyalty. Does he? Sarah's laugh is soft and knowing. Look how he treated Tom this morning, beating the boy for a simple mistake. Look how he wastes ammunition on wild schemes while his men go hungry. Is that leadership? The seeds of doubt take root in Hank's mind. Over the next few days, Sarah continues her subtle manipulation. She demonstrates her skills whenever forced, but always with a quiet dignity that makes Harper's brutality look increasingly unhinged. Young gang members like Tom begin coming to her for advice, drawn by her calm strength. Even hardened killers like Snake Eye find themselves questioning Harper's judgment. You know what they called me before the Scarlet Viper? Sarah asks Tom one evening as he brings her dinner. The ghost. Because if you crossed me, if you hurt innocent people, I'd haunt your steps until justice was done. Some say I still do. The story spreads through the gang like wildfire. Men begin jumping at shadows, remembering tales of the Viper's vengeance. Harper's increasingly erratic behavior doesn't help matters. Double the guards, he orders, paranoia consuming him. Triple them. Nobody enters or leaves without my say-so. But Sarah knows the fort's weaknesses better than Harper ever will. She's counted every loose stone, noted every blind spot. More importantly, she's counted every man who's begun to look at her with respect rather than fear. You're working them too hard, she tells Harper when he visits her cell, drink heavy on his breath. Men need rest, or they make mistakes. But then, that's always been your problem, hasn't it? Using fear instead of loyalty. Shut your mouth. Harper roars, but his hands shake as he points at her. You're trying to turn them against me. I see your game. Sarah merely smiles. I don't have to try, Harper. You're doing that all by yourself. That night, Harper sits alone in his office, jumping at every sound. Through his window, he watches his men gathered around the campfire, listening to Tom tell another story about the Scarlet Viper's legendary exploits. Even loyal Snake Eye seems enthralled. Conspiring, Harper mutters, taking another drink. All of them, conspiring. He doesn't notice Hank watching from the shadows, doesn't see the calculating look in his lieutenant's eyes, doesn't realize that with every paranoid order, every drunken rage, he's pushing his men further into Sarah's camp. In her cell, Sarah hums her familiar lullaby, one hand resting on her belly. Everything is proceeding exactly as she planned. Harper thought he'd caught a helpless woman, but instead, he'd brought a wolf into his fold. Now all she has to do is wait as his paranoia and her reputation do their work. Your pa was right about one thing, she whispers to her unborn child. Sometimes the best weapon is patience. And I've learned to be very, very patient. Outside, the wind carries the sound of nervous whispers and restless horses. Harper's control is slipping, and everyone knows it. The only question is who will make the first move. Hank with his growing ambition, the gang members with their mounting fears, or Sarah herself with her careful plans. The fort settles into an uneasy quiet, but it's the quiet of a powder keg waiting for a spark. In her cell, Sarah counts the hours, knowing that soon, very soon, everything will explode. And when it does, Jed Harper will learn why they called her the Scarlet Viper. Because once she strikes, there's no escape from her vengeance. The moon rises over the canyon walls, casting long shadows across the fort. In his office, Harper drinks and rages at phantoms. In the barracks, men whisper about legends and vengeance. And in her cell, Sarah McAllister, the Scarlet Viper, smiles in the darkness, knowing that her greatest hunt is about to begin. The morning explodes in a chaos when Snake Eye and Harper come to blows in the fort's courtyard. The argument starts over something small, a missing bottle of whiskey, but weeks of tension finally rupture into violence. "You've lost your mind," Snake Eye shouts, blood streaming from his nose. "Seeing traitors everywhere, drinking yourself stupid while the Carson gang closes in." Harper draws his pistol, but 3 gang members immediately step between them. It's a telling moment. Weeks ago, no one would have dared interfere. "Take your hand off that gun, boss," Hank says quietly. "Unless you're planning to shoot all of us." From her window, Sarah watches the confrontation with calculating eyes. She spent weeks memorizing the fort's layout, noting which floorboards creak, which guards grow sleepy after midnight. More importantly, she's been collecting a length of rope hidden in her mattress, dried food scraped from her meals, a sharp piece of metal worked loose from her bed frame. The sound of approaching footsteps makes her quickly hide her latest acquisition, a small knife slipped to her by Tom during breakfast. The young outlaw has become her most loyal ally, his conscience finally overwhelming his fear of Harper. "Mrs. McAllister?" Tom's voice is barely a whisper through her door. "The stable hand quit this morning. Left the north gate unguarded." Sarah moves to the door, keeping her voice low. "Thank you, Tom. Remember what I told you about the signal? 3 shots means get clear of the fort," he confirms. "I'll make sure the others know too." Later that afternoon, Sarah puts her escape plan into action. She's timed it carefully. The guards are changing shifts, and Harper is deep in his cups. Using her hidden tools, she works the doors lock-free and slips into the hallway. She makes it as far as the stables before everything goes wrong. A horse whinnies in warning, and suddenly Harper is there, appearing from the shadows like a nightmare. "Going somewhere, Viper?" His voice is slurred but dangerous. Sarah reaches for a weapon that isn't there, cursing her slowness. The pregnancy has changed her balance, her speed. "Now!" Harper bellows, and men emerge from hiding places around the stable. They've been waiting for her. The beating that follows is brutal but calculated. Harper is careful to avoid her belly, focusing his rage on her face and ribs. Through it all, Sarah doesn't make a sound, her eyes burning with a cold fury that makes even hardened killers step back. "Throw her in the cellar," Harper orders finally. "Let's see how the Viper likes the dark." The cellar is worse than her room. Dank, pitch black, with barely enough space to lie down. But Sarah's lips curl into a smile as they lock her in. They haven't searched her thoroughly enough. She still has the knife. Hours pass in darkness. Sarah's entire body aches, but her mind remains sharp, calculating. The cellar door opens, and heavy boots descend the stairs. Brought you some water. Hank's voice comes through the darkness. And something else? A proposition. I'm listening. Sarah's voice is hoarse but steady. Harper's lost it. Everyone sees it now. Even Snake Eyes ready to turn. A pause. Help me take control of the gang. You've got the reputation, the skills. Help me overthrow him, and I'll make sure you get home safe. Sarah considers this in the darkness. And after? What kind of leader will you be, Hank? A smart one. No more random violence. No attacking families. We'll stick to banks, rich folks who can afford the loss. You'll need training, Sarah says finally. You and your men. Harper's got loyalists who won't go down easy. Can you teach us? Even in your condition? Sarah's laugh is soft but dangerous. Oh, Hank, I could teach you things that would make your hair turn white. Over the next few days, Sarah holds secret training sessions in the cellar. She teaches Hank's men how to move silently, how to work as a unit, how to take down opponents twice their size. Young Tom proves an especially apt pupil, his natural agility, making him perfect for the quick, precise movements Sarah favors. Fighting isn't about strength, she tells them. It's about awareness, anticipation, knowing your enemy's move before they make it. The lessons extend beyond combat. Sarah teaches them strategy, the importance of gathering intelligence, how to read people and situations. All the skills that made her legendary. Harper's got 8 men still loyal to him, Hank reports one evening. Maybe 9 if you count Drake, but he's always been fence sitter. And you've got 12, Sarah confirms. More importantly, you've got the high ground. The loyalists all sleep in the lower barracks. Their planning is interrupted by gunfire from the canyon. Harper's scouts have encountered riders. Ethan's group, though Sarah doesn't know it. Her heart clenches at the sound of distant shooting. Get everyone inside the fort, she instructs Hank. But make sure Harper's men take the exposed positions. Let them deal with any attack. The skirmish ends quickly, the intruders driven back into the hills. Sarah doesn't know if she should be relieved or disappointed. But there's no time for such thoughts. The failed escape attempt and Ethan's proximity have made Harper even more unstable. He's not sleeping, Tom reports. Walks the walls at night, shooting at shadows. Nearly killed Pete yesterday. Thought he was a Carson gang spy. Sarah nods. Everything is proceeding as she expected. Harper's paranoia is doing half her work for her, driving even his loyal men away. The breaking point comes when Harper orders all food and water to be kept under guard, convinced someone is poisoning his supplies. The resulting argument splits the gang further, with 3 more men switching to Hank's side. Tonight, Sarah tells Hank during his evening visit to the cellar. Harper's got most of his loyalists watching the canyon, afraid of another attack. The fort will be practically empty. Hank hesitates. You sure about this? Once we start, there's no going back. There was no going back the moment he took me. Sarah's voice carries the weight of certainty. The only question is whether you're ready to be the leader these men need. As midnight approaches, Sarah sits in her cellar, counting seconds. She's positioned everyone carefully. Hank's men slowly taking up strategic positions. Tom ready with the horses in case things go wrong. Harper's loyalists scattered and isolated. The first shot, when it comes, is deafening in the night air. Sarah smiles in the darkness as chaos erupts above her. Everything is falling into place. And in his office, Harper jerks awake at the sound of gunfire, his worst fears finally becoming reality. The legendary Scarlet Viper has been playing him all along, and now his carefully built kingdom is about to crumble. Sarah rises slowly in her cellar, one hand resting on her belly. Time to remind them why they feared me, she whispers to her unborn child. One last dance, little one. Then we'll go home to your father. Above her, the fort erupts into all-out war. Sarah's careful planning and weeks of preparation are about to bear fruit. The cage she's been in wasn't holding her. It was holding everyone else exactly where she wanted them. Boots thunder on the floorboards overhead. Men shout and guns roar in the darkness. Sarah stands in her cellar, calm and ready, waiting for Hank's signal. Everything has led to this moment. The cellar door crashes open, and Hank stands silhouetted against the torchlit hallway, a ring of keys in his hand. It's time, he says simply. Sarah ascends the stairs like a spirit of vengeance. Her pregnancy, doing nothing to diminish her deadly grace. The fort's corridors are filled with smoke and confusion, exactly as she planned. In the chaos, Harper's remaining loyalists won't know where to turn, who to trust. Remember, she calls out to Hank's men as they move into position. Quick, clean, and coordinated. Just like we practiced, the fort has become a battlefield of her own design, and Sarah McAllister, the Scarlet Viper, is about to remind everyone why her name once struck terror into the hearts of the worst outlaws in the West. The night air carries the smell of gunpowder and destiny. Somewhere in the darkness, Harper waits, his paranoid fears finally justified. But he doesn't understand that his real mistake wasn't in capturing the Scarlet Viper. It was in thinking he could cage her. Sarah moves through the smoky corridors like a ghost, her time in captivity forgotten as old instincts take over. The legend of the Scarlet Viper is about to add another chapter, and Jed Harper is about to learn why you should never corner a snake, especially one protecting more than just herself. The gang meeting in the fort's main hall crackles with tension. Harper stands at the head of the rough wooden table, his bloodshot eyes darting between faces as he rambles about loyalty and strength. Sarah sits quietly in the corner where they've forced her to stay, watching, waiting. Her eyes meet Hank's across the room, and he gives an almost imperceptible nod. And another thing, Harper slurs, whiskey bottle in hand. I'm tired of the whispers. Tired of the questioning. I'm the one who built this gang. Me. Not some pregnant woman with a reputation. Sarah's hand slides to the knife hidden in the folds of her dress. The signal comes exactly as planned. 3 sharp knocks on the door, Tom's warning that the Carson gang has been spotted approaching. Chaos erupts in exactly the way Sarah choreographed. As men rush to grab weapons, Hank's loyalists move into position. Sarah rises with deadly grace, the hidden knife finding Harper's right-hand man before anyone realizes what's happening. Now! Hank roars, and half the gang draws on the other half. Harper's face contorts with rage and betrayal. Kill them. Kill them all. The main hall explodes into violence. Sarah moves like a dancer despite her condition, her blade finding vulnerable spots with surgical precision. She's carefully positioned the furniture to create obstacles, forcing Harper's men to fight in unfavorable positions. You treacherous snake! Harper howls, firing wildly as Hank's men push him back toward the wall. I knew you were plotting something. You knew nothing, Sarah replies calmly, ducking behind an overturned table. That was always your problem, Harper. Too busy listening to your own voice to hear the storm coming. The battle splits across faction lines that Sarah has carefully cultivated for weeks. Snake Eye and 4 others stand with Harper, while 14 men rally to Hank's side. The remaining gang members hesitate, caught between loyalties. Choose now. Harper screams at the undecided men. Stand with me or die with them. But Sarah's quiet voice cuts through the chaos. Look at him, she calls out. Look at what he's become. Is this the leader you want to follow? A paranoid drunk who beats his own men? 3 more gang members cross to Hank's side, and Harper's face twists with fury. He begins firing indiscriminately, forcing even his loyal followers to take cover. You're all dead, he rages. Every last one of you. Sarah takes command of the situation with the authority of experience. Tom, take 3 men and secure the stables. Mitchell, guard the south exit. Hank, push them toward the storage room. It's a dead end. Her tactical brilliance shines as she orchestrates the battle, positioning men to cut off Harper's escape routes while minimizing their exposure. The gang members who've sided with her follow her orders without question, recognizing the skill that made her legendary. In the chaos, young Tom finds himself face-to-face with Snake Eye Martinez. The scarred enforcer grins wickedly, drawing his knife. Always knew you were too soft for this life, boy, Snake Eye taunts. Time to put you down? But Tom isn't the same scared youth who joined Harper's gang. Weeks of Sarah's training have transformed him. He moves exactly as she taught him, using his smaller size and quicker reflexes to his advantage. Being soft doesn't mean being weak, Tom replies, his voice steady as he circles his opponent. When Snake Eye lunges, Tom sidesteps precisely, his own blade finding the weak spot beneath the larger man's ribs. The legendary enforcer crumples, disbelief etched on his face. Well done, Sarah calls out, genuine pride in her voice. The other gang members stare in amazement. Snake Eye had seemed unbeatable until now. But the victory comes at a cost. Harper's desperate resistance is taking its toll. 3 of Hank's men lie dead or wounded, and the fighting has spread throughout the fort. The sound of gunfire echoes off the canyon walls, a beacon to anyone within miles. Sarah presses her advantage, coordinating the remaining fighters to tighten the noose around Harper. But the old outlaw's survival instincts kick in. Seeing his position becoming desperate, he grabs the closest thing to a human shield, one of his own wounded men. "Back off," he shouts, pressing his gun to the injured man's head. "Or I paint the walls with his brains. You'd murder your own man?" Sarah's voice drips with contempt. "Is there no low you won't sink to, Harper's?" The moment of distraction is all he needs. Harper shoves his human shield towards Sarah's group and makes a break for the back exit. 2 of his remaining loyalists lay down covering fire, forcing everyone to take cover. After him, Hank yells, but Sarah grabs his arm. "Wait," she commands. He's desperate. He'll have traps set. She's right. The first man through the door takes a shotgun blast to the chest. Harper has rigged his escape route, knowing he might need it. "Let him run," Sarah orders. "We've got what we wanted, the fort." As the gunfire dies down, Sarah takes charge of securing their position. "Search every room. I want all weapons gathered in the main hall. Any of Harper's men who want to surrender, now's your chance. No reprisals if you lay down arms immediately." Several of Harper's remaining loyalists take the offer, dropping their guns. Others flee into the night after their leader. Sarah sets guards on the walls and organizes teams to tend the wounded. "Tom," she calls to the young fighter still standing proudly over Snake Eye's body. "Get up to the watchtower. Harper will try to gather reinforcements. I want to know the moment you spot riders." The fort slowly comes under control. Hank's authority is established, but everyone knows who's really in charge. They've seen the legend of the Scarlet Viper in action, and the reality exceeded the stories. As the adrenaline fades, Sarah allows herself to sink into a chair, one hand resting on her belly. The baby has been active throughout the fight, as if sensing its mother's excitement. "Easy, little one," she murmurs. "The worst is over." Tom approaches hesitantly. "Ma'am? That move you taught me, the one I used on Snake Eye." "Thank you." Sarah smiles warmly. "You did well, Tom. You're not the scared boy I met weeks ago." "No, ma'am. Don't reckon I am." Hank joins them, his face serious. "Harper's still out there. He'll be back with whatever scum he can scrape together." "Let him come," Sarah replies calmly. "We have a high ground now, and better men defending it." She rises slowly, surveying the fort that's now under their control. The walls that were her prison are now her fortress, and she intends to use them. "Bring me Jake Morton," she orders. Morton had been one of Harper's most loyal men before being wounded in the fight. They bring the injured outlaw before her. He glares defiantly despite his pain. "You're going to carry a message to Harper," Sarah tells him. "Tell him the Scarlet Viper sends her regards. Tell him I'm not his prisoner anymore. I'm his nightmare. If he's smart, he'll ride far and fast. If he's stupid enough to come back." She lets the threat hang in the air. As Morton is helped onto a horse and sent on his way, Sarah stands on the fort's walls, watching the sun rise over the canyon. The first battle is won, but she knows Harper too well to think it's over. "Post extra guards," she tells Hank, "and start training the men in proper defensive positions. Harper will try to retake the fort, and I mean to give him a proper welcome when he does." The morning light reveals the cost of their victory: blood-stained floors, bullet-riddled walls, fresh graves to dig. But Sarah sees something else too: men standing straighter, holding their heads higher. They're no longer Harper's thugs, but soldiers in a cause they believe in. "Tom," she calls to the young man still watching the horizon. "Tell me what you see up there." "Dust clouds to the south," he reports, "but too far to tell if it's Harper or just travelers." Sarah nods approvingly. "Keep watching. And remember, you've earned your place here. Not through brutality like Snake Eye, but through courage and skill." Throughout the day, Sarah strengthens their position. The wounded are tended, defenses are fortified, and supplies are inventoried. She knows Harper will return with reinforcements, probably from other outlaw gangs eager to help crush a mutiny. But she's not the same woman they imprisoned weeks ago. The Scarlet Viper has shed her rancher's wife disguise, And while she longs to return to Ethan and their peaceful life, she has one last battle to fight first. As evening approaches, Sarah gathers the men in the courtyard. Harper thought he could break us, she declares. Thought he could rule through fear and violence. But look around you, look at what we've built in just one day. This fort isn't just a hideout anymore. It's a symbol of something better. The men cheer, their loyalty now firmly cemented. Even Hank, who originally saw her as a means to power, looks at her with genuine respect. Sarah returns to her old cell, now transformed into a command center. Maps cover the walls, marked with possible approaches Harper might take. She's already plotting ambush points, defensive positions, ways to turn the canyon itself into a weapon. Your mama's quite something, she hears Tom telling her unborn child through the window. Reckon there ain't a better teacher in all the territories. Sarah smiles, touching her belly gently. Soon she'll return to Ethan, to their ranch, to the peaceful life they've built. But first, she has to ensure Harper can never threaten that peace again. As night falls, the fort settles into watchful readiness. Sentries pace the walls, alert for any sign of Harper's return. In her room, Sarah studies the terrain by lamplight, planning her final confrontation with the man who dared to cage her. The warning she sent with Morton was more than just a threat, it was a promise. The Scarlet Viper has reclaimed her deadly reputation, and Jed Harper is about to learn why she was the most feared gunslinger in the West. The canyon echoes with the sound of hoofbeats as Ethan's posse follows a trail of violence through the wilderness. They've found 3 abandoned camps in the last day, each telling its own story of conflict. Spent bullet casings glint in the dust, and hastily dug graves mark the cost of whatever happened here. While Hawkins kneels beside a cold campfire, his weathered fingers sifting through the ashes. This was no ordinary gang fight, he says, standing slowly. These positions here, see how they're arranged? Tactical, professional. Ethan studies the scene, his eyes catching details he would have missed weeks ago. Empty cans arranged in a precise line for target practice. Shell casings grouped in disciplined clusters rather than scattered randomly. And most telling, careful measurements marked in the dirt, exactly the length of a man's stride. Sarah, he breathes, recognition dawning. She's teaching them how to fight. Will agrees, a note of pride in his voice. The Viper's building herself an army. Jackson Cole, the former Harper gang member, nods appreciatively. Smart. Harper's men were always undisciplined. Looks like somebody's changing that. The posse moves on, following tracks that lead deeper into the canyon country. But they're not alone in these twisted valleys. Harper's loyalists have been watching, waiting for their chance. The ambush comes in a narrow pass, bullets suddenly spitting dust around them. Ethan reacts instantly, months of Will's training taking over. He rolls from his horse, drawing his rifle in one smooth motion. Cover! Will shouts, but Ethan is already moving, circling behind their attackers just as Sarah taught him in their practice sessions. The firefight is brief, but intense. Ethan moves with a confidence that surprises even himself, his shots finding their marks with deadly precision. When one of Harper's men tries to flank their position, Ethan drops him with a single shot. Well, Will says afterwards, surveying the scene. Looks like my teaching took root after all. Stanley Wright claps Ethan on the shoulder. Never thought I'd see the day a rancher could outshoot a gunslinger. I had a good teacher, Ethan replies modestly. Several, actually, but his thoughts are on Sarah, wondering if she'd be proud of the man he's becoming. They're approaching another bend in the canyon when a voice rings out from above. That's far enough. Hands where we can see them. Rifles protrude from rocky outcroppings. Sarah's scouts, though they don't know it yet. Young Tom peers down at them, his fingers steady on the trigger. Name's Ethan McAllister. Ethan calls out clearly. I'm looking for my wife. There's a moment of tense silence. Then Tom's voice comes again, uncertain. The rancher? Mrs. Sarah's husband. The same. And I'd appreciate not getting shot after coming all this way to find her. Laughter echoes from the rocks, and Tom's face appears clearly. Lower your weapons, boys. This is the man she's been waiting for. The fort appears around the next bend, its walls now bristling with alert defenders. Sarah stands on the ramparts, one hand shielding her eyes against the sun. For a moment, she's perfectly still, hardly daring to believe what she's seeing. "Ethan." Her voice carries across the courtyard as she hurries down to the gate, moving as quickly as her condition allows. They meet in the fort's entrance, and everything else fades away. Ethan pulls her into his arms, careful of her swollen belly, breathing in her familiar scent mixed with gunpowder and leather. "I'm so sorry," he whispers against her hair. "I should have protected you. Should have been stronger." Sarah pulls back, her eyes fierce. "You have nothing to apologize for. But we need to talk, Ethan. There's so much I should have told you." They retreat to Sarah's quarters, the former prison cell she's transformed into a command center. Maps and tactical diagrams cover the walls, and weapons are arranged with military precision. "So," Ethan says softly, taking it all in, "the Scarlet Viper." Sarah sits heavily in a chair, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "I wanted to tell you so many times, but I was afraid you'd look at me differently, that the life I'd built with you would disappear. Why did you choose me?" The question comes out before he can stop it. "A simple rancher, when you could have had." "Because you were real," Sarah interrupts fiercely. "Because you looked at me and saw a woman, not a legend. Because your gentleness made me believe I could be more than just a killer." Ethan kneels beside her chair, taking her hands in his. "You were never just a killer. The woman who tends our chickens, who hums to our unborn child. That's just as real as the Scarlet Viper." Tears slip down Sarah's cheeks. "I love you," she whispers. "I love the life we built. But Harper threatened you and our baby. I had to become her again, just one last time." "Then let me help," Ethan says firmly. "I'm not the same man they took you from. Will and the others have taught me well." A small smile plays across Sarah's lips. "I can see that. That shot in the pass, taking out Harper's man before he could flank you? Beautiful work." Ethan blinks in surprise. "You saw that?" "I have scouts everywhere," Sarah says proudly. "Speaking of which," she leads him to the courtyard where Will and the others wait. The fort's defenders eye the newcomers with a mix of curiosity and respect. "Listen up," Sarah's voice carries across the yard. "These men are our allies. They've proven themselves against Harper's forces, and they bring skills we need. Together, we're stronger." The integration of the two groups begins immediately. Will's tactical experience complements Sarah's leadership perfectly. Jackson Cole's inside knowledge of Harper's methods proves invaluable in planning defenses. Sarah oversees training sessions, pushing both groups to work as one unit. Ethan throws himself into the preparations, his newfound skills earning respect from even the hardened outlaws. "Keep your guard up," Sarah instructs during a sparring session. "Harper fights dirty. He'll take any advantage." As if summoned by her words, a rider appears at the fort's gate. They recognize him as Mike Foster, one of the men who'd remained loyal to Sarah during the mutiny. But something's wrong. Foster slumps from his saddle, multiple knife wounds visible in his chest. A message has been carved into his back. "Coming for you, Viper." "Harper's trying to scare us," Tom says, his young face hard with anger. "No," Sarah corrects quietly. "He's trying to make us angry. Trying to make us reckless." She turns to address the assembled fighters. "This is what Harper does. He tries to get under your skin, make you lose focus." That evening, Sarah calls a war council in the main hall. Maps are spread across the table as she outlines her plan. "Harper will come in force," she explains, marking positions on the map. "He's gathered every cutthroat and killer who'll ride with him." "But that's exactly what we want. We want to be outnumbered?" Stanley Wright asks skeptically. "We want them all in one place," Sarah corrects. "Harper spent years building a network of outlaws. If we don't end it now, completely, they'll keep coming." Ethan studies the map, seeing the trap she's laying. "The canyon. You're going to use the terrain against them." Sarah smiles proudly. "Exactly. We control the high ground, know every trail and hideout. And more importantly," she pats her belly meaningfully, "they'll underestimate us. Harper knows I'm near my time. He'll think that makes me vulnerable. And that's when we spring the trap," Will concludes, nodding appreciatively. Classic Viper strategy. The planning continues late into the night. Sarah's tactical brilliance shines as she assigns positions, coordinating multiple teams for maximum effect. Ethan watches her in amazement, seeing how naturally leadership sits on her shoulders. I understand now, he tells her later, as they stand on the fort's walls under the stars. Why they tell stories about you. Why men followed you. Sarah leans against him, tired but determined. They're following us now, Ethan. You've earned their respect, same as I have. We'll end this, he promises. Then we'll go home, raise our child in peace. Sarah's hand finds his, squeezing gently. One last battle, she agrees. One last time, as the Scarlet Viper. Then I'm just Sarah McAllister again. But they both know it's not that simple. The legend and the woman are both part of her, just as Ethan is now both rancher and warrior. They've each grown into something more than they were, tempered by adversity and strengthened by love. Dawn finds them already at work, preparing for the coming storm. Sarah moves through the fort like a general, inspecting her troops, checking weapons, reviewing positions, ensuring every detail of her plan is perfect. Harper will come at us with everything he has, she tells her assembled forces. He has to. His reputation, his power, everything depends on crushing this rebellion. But that's his weakness. He cares more about his image than his men's lives. She looks at each face in turn, seeing not outlaws and thieves, but soldiers ready to fight for something bigger than themselves. We're fighting for more than survival, she continues. We're fighting for the chance to be better than what we were. Harper offers nothing but violence and fear. We offer a choice. The men stand straighter, pride evident in their bearing. Even Tom, the youngest among them, looks like a seasoned warrior now. A scout rides in with news. Harper's force has been spotted, over 50 riders strong. The final battle is approaching. Sarah kisses Ethan softly, then turns to give her final orders. The legend of the Scarlet Viper is about to write its last chapter, and she means to make it one that will be remembered for generations. Dawn mist clings to the canyon walls as Sarah's forces take their positions. She's chosen the battlefield carefully, a natural bottleneck where the canyon narrows, with high walls offering perfect cover for shooters. The morning sun will be at their backs, blinding anyone approaching from the east. Remember, Sarah instructs her hidden forces, wait for my signal. No matter what happens, no matter what you see or hear, wait for those 3 shots. Ethan checks his rifle one final time before taking his position behind a boulder. You sure about this? He asks softly. Using yourself as bait? Sarah touches his face gently. Harper's ego won't let him resist. Seeing me apparently alone, vulnerable, he'll think it's his chance for revenge. Well, Hawkins appears like a ghost from the shadows. Riders approaching. Over 50 like we expected. But something's wrong. They're moving too careful-like. Sarah's eyes narrow. He knows. Harper's figured out we're planning something. As if confirming her words, gunfire erupts from unexpected directions. Harper's men haven't just come through the canyon. They're rappelling down the cliffs, attacking from above. He's outflanking us. Hank shouts, diving for cover as bullets chip stone around him. No, Sarah says calmly, watching the chaos unfold. He's doing exactly what I wanted. She raises her voice to carry across the battlefield. Fall back to secondary positions. Just like we practiced. Her forces retreat in careful order, drawing Harper's men deeper into the canyon. What looks like a rout is actually a carefully choreographed dance, positioning the attackers exactly where Sarah wants them. Harper himself appears at the canyon's mouth, mounted on a massive black stallion. Come out, Viper, he bellows. Face me like the legend you pretend to be. Still trying to write the story your way, Harper? Sarah calls back, her voice echoing off the canyon walls. Still think you can control everything? The battle erupts in earnest now. Sarah's defenders have the high ground and better cover, but Harper's numbers are telling. The canyon fills with gunsmoke and the thunder of rifles. Sarah coordinates her forces masterfully, shifting defenders to meet each new threat. When Harper's men try to rush the eastern passage, they're met with devastating crossfire. When they attempt to scale the cliffs, pre-positioned rock slides cut them down. But Harper's ruthlessness matches Sarah's cunning. He sends men to die in waves, wearing down the defenders through sheer attrition. The morning wears on, and the casualties mount on both sides. A flash of movement catches Sarah's eye, a shooter she hadn't spotted, taking aim at her from a hidden crevice. Before she can react, Ethan's rifle cracks. The would-be assassin tumbles from his perch. "I had him," Sarah says, smiling. "I know," Ethan replies, already scanning for more threats. "But I promised to protect you, remember?" The moment of levity is shattered by young Tom's shout. "Mrs. Sarah, they're bringing up dynamite." Sarah sees the danger immediately. Harper's men are preparing to blast away their defensive positions, and Tom is directly in the blast zone. "Tom, get out of there," she screams, but the young man holds his position, firing steadily at the approaching demolition team. "Can't let them through, ma'am," he calls back. "You taught me. Sometimes one person has to hold the line." The explosion rocks the canyon. Tom's position disappears in a cloud of dust and debris. When the smoke clears, the young defender is gone, but he's taken Harper's demolition team with him. "No," Sarah whispers, grief warring with pride. But there's no time for mourning. Harper's men are charging through the gap Tom died defending. Hank Reynolds leads the countercharge, his voice rising above the din for Tom. "Make it mean something." The fighting becomes desperate, hand-to-hand in places as the two forces clash in the narrow confines. Hank finds himself face-to-face with Harper, their old boss-subordinate relationship ending in violence. "You were never worthy to lead," Harper snarls, his knife flashing. "And you were never worthy to follow." Hank shoots back, landing a crushing blow. But Harper fights like a cornered wolf. His knife finds Hank's ribs, and the lieutenant staggers back, blood staining his shirt. Still the same weak fool, Harper laughs, raising his knife for the killing blow. A single shot rings out. Harper's knife goes flying, along with two of his fingers. Sarah stands in the dust, her revolvers drawn, every inch the legendary Scarlet Viper. "Step away from him, Harper," she commands. "This ends between you and me." The battlefield goes quiet. Fighters on both sides lower their weapons, forming an impromptu arena for the final confrontation. "Should have killed you when I had the chance," Harper spits, drawing his remaining gun. "You never had the chance," Sarah replies calmly. "You just thought you did. Like everything else in your life, built on lies and fear." They circle each other in the dust, two legends preparing for their final dance. Harper's face is a mask of hatred, while Sarah moves with deadly grace despite her pregnancy. "Look at you," Harper sneers. "The mighty Scarlet Viper, playing house with a rancher. You could have ruled these territories. Could have been a queen." "I chose love," Sarah answers simply. "Something you've never understood, and that's why you'll lose." Harper draws first, fast as a striking snake. But Sarah is faster. Her first shot takes his gun hand, the second his knee. As he crumples, her third shot sends his backup weapon spinning away. "Impossible," Harper gasps. "You're with child. You should be slow, weak." Sarah stands over him, both guns trained on his heart. "A mother protecting her family is never weak, Harper. That's another thing you never understood." The defeated outlaw reaches for a hidden derringer, but Sarah's reaction is instant. Two final shots echo through the canyon, and Jed Harper's reign of terror ends in the dust. Silence falls over the battlefield. Harper's remaining men throw down their weapons, seeing their leader fallen and their cause lost. Sarah's defenders emerge from cover, their victory tempered by the cost. Will Hawkins supervises the surrender, while Ethan rushes to Sarah's side. She allows herself to lean on him, the strain of the battle finally showing. "Tom," she asks quietly, though she already knows the answer. Hank, supported by two others, shakes his head. "Died saving all of us. Died a hero." They find Tom's body in the rubble. Despite the violence of the explosion, his face is peaceful, almost smiling. Sarah kneels beside him, heedless of her condition. "You held the line," she whispers, touching his cheek. "Rest easy, brave one." The survivors gather, taking stock of their losses and victories. Harper's reign is over, his network of outlaws shattered. The territories will be safer now, though the price was high. "What happens now?" one of Harper's surrendered men asks. Sarah looks at Ethan, then addresses them all. "Now we choose. Continue down Harper's path of violence, or build something better. The past doesn't have to define our future." Many of the former outlaws step forward, offering to join Hank's reform gang. Others ask for help returning to honest lives. The legend of the Scarlet Viper is changing, no longer just a dealer of death, but a source of redemption. As the sun sets over the canyon, Sarah and Ethan stand together, watching their unlikely family begin to heal and rebuild. "Ready to go home?" Ethan asks softly. Sarah touches her belly, feeling their child move. "Home," she agrees. "But maybe we can make it something more. A place where others can find the peace we found. A sanctuary," Ethan understands. "For those looking to change their lives." And a warning to those who'd threaten the peace, Sarah adds. "The Scarlet Viper may be retiring, but she'll always protect her own." The canyon grows quiet as the day fades. Harper's body is buried without ceremony, his legacy of fear already fading. Tom is laid to rest with full honors, his sacrifice marked with a cairn that will stand as a monument to courage. Sarah looks out over the battlefield one last time. The legend of the Scarlet Viper will live on, but transformed. Not just a story of vengeance, but one of redemption, of love's power to change even the hardest heart. "Let's go home," she says finally. "We have a nursery to finish." As they ride away from the canyon, Sarah's forces fall in behind them, not as outlaws or gunfighters now, but as family. The sun sets on one chapter of the West's history, but dawn is coming, bringing with it the promise of something better. The legend of the Scarlet Viper isn't ending, Sarah realizes. It's evolving, becoming a story of hope rather than fear. And as she rides beside Ethan, their child growing beneath her heart, she knows that's the greatest victory of all. The morning after the battle dawns clear and quiet. Sarah stands with Ethan at the head of a row of fresh graves, her hand resting protectively over her swollen belly. Each mound of earth represents a life given in the fight for something better, and she's determined to honor their sacrifice. "We gather here," she begins, her voice carrying across the assembled survivors, "not just to mourn our losses, but to celebrate their courage. Each person here died fighting for change, for the chance to build something better than what they knew before." They've marked each grave with a wooden cross, names carved carefully by Will Hawkins' steady hand. But Tom's grave stands apart, marked with a stone cairn that will endure long after the wooden crosses have weathered away. Hank Reynolds, still bandaged from his wounds, steps forward to lay a handful of wildflowers on Tom's grave. "He was the best of us," he says simply. "Proved you don't need a lifetime of violence to have true courage." The journey back to the McAllister Ranch is slow, allowing their wounded to travel comfortably. As they crest the final hill, Sarah catches her breath. The ranch shows signs of the attack that started everything: broken fences, damaged buildings, the ghost of violence still lingering. "It's just wood and nails," Ethan says softly, seeing her expression. "We can rebuild it." "We'll help," Stanley Wright calls out from behind them. "Whole town will." About time we stopped living in fear and started standing together. True to his word, the people of Willow Creek turn out in force over the next few days. Men arrive with tools and lumber, women bring food and supplies. Even Sheriff Morton appears, hat in hand, to offer his assistance. "I was wrong," he tells Sarah plainly. "Wrong to stand aside, wrong about a lot of things. If you're willing to teach us how to defend ourselves, we're willing to learn." Sarah watches from the porch as Ethan directs the reconstruction efforts. He moves with new confidence, quietly authoritative in a way he never was before. The gentle rancher hasn't disappeared, but he's been tempered by experience, strengthened by adversity. In the quiet of evening, Sarah sits at her desk, pen hovering over paper as she struggles to find the right words to write to Tom's family. "Dear Mrs. Reeves," she finally begins, "your son Tom was the finest person I've ever had the privilege to know. He died as he lived, thinking of others, standing up for what's right. But before I tell you about his last day, I want to tell you about all the days before, about the young man who showed me that goodness can survive in the darkest places." The letter flows from her pen, pages filling with stories of Tom's courage, his kindness, his growth from a scared boy to a true hero. She tells his mother about his dreams of making things right, his plans to help others find a better path. "Your son changed me," she writes near the end. "Changed all of us. His sacrifice saved not just lives, but souls. He showed us that our past doesn't have to define our future, that redemption is possible for anyone brave enough to choose it." As she seals the letter, Ethan finds her wiping tears from her cheeks. Without a word, he pulls her into his arms, holding her as she finally allows herself to grieve. "I failed him," she whispers. "I should have protected him." "No," Ethan says firmly. "You gave him what he needed most, the chance to become his best self, to die for something he believed in." They stand together on their porch as the sun sets, watching the transformed landscape of their ranch. The new barn rises stronger than before, the fences now reinforced with stone at the bases. Like them, everything here has been tested by fire and emerged stronger. "Look at us," Sarah muses, leaning against her husband. "The legendary Scarlet Viper and the gentle rancher. Who would have thought?" Ethan chuckles, his hand joining hers over their unborn child. "We both changed, but maybe that's what love does. Helps you become more truly yourself, not less." The next morning brings more visitors. Young people from town, led by Sheriff Morton's daughter Lucy. They're barely more than children, but their eyes are serious. "We want to learn," Lucy announces. "Not to be killers, but to be protectors. Like Tom was." Sarah studies their earnest faces, seeing echoes of Tom and their determination. "It won't be easy," she warns. "I'll expect discipline, dedication. This isn't about violence. It's about responsibility." "We understand, ma'am," Lucy replies. "That's why we're here." And so a new chapter begins. 3 times a week, Sarah works with her students in a converted pasture. She teaches them more than just shooting and self-defense. She teaches them ethics, judgment, the weight of carrying power. "Anyone can learn to pull a trigger," she tells them during one lesson. "The hard part is learning when not to. That's what separates defenders from destroyers." Ethan watches these sessions with pride, sometimes joining in to demonstrate techniques Will taught him. The students are particularly impressed by their partnership, the way they move in perfect sync during demonstrations. "Mrs. McAllister makes it look so easy," Lucy comments one day, trying to master a difficult defensive move. "Nothing worth doing is easy," Sarah responds. "But that's what makes it valuable. Every drop of sweat here means less blood later." The ranch itself begins to transform, becoming more than just a home. Former gang members, seeking honest work, find employment helping with the livestock and repairs. The McAllisters' reputation for giving second chances spreads, drawing others looking to change their lives. One evening, Sarah finds Ethan adding a new room to their house plans. "What's this?" she asks, studying the drawing. "A training room," he explains, "for winter sessions. And maybe—" he hesitates, then continues, "maybe someday for our child to learn their mother's better lessons." Sarah's hand goes to her belly, feeling their baby kick. "Our child will know both their parents' strengths," she says softly. "Your kindness and my determination. Your wisdom and my skill." The weeks pass, and peace settles over the ranch like a comfortable blanket. The nightmares that once plagued Sarah come less frequently. The tension that had become habit in Ethan's shoulders eases. They're different people than they were before Harper's attack, but stronger for it. One quiet evening, they sit together on their newly rebuilt porch, watching their students practice in the distance. The setting sun paints the scene in gold, and the sound of laughter carries on the breeze. "I never thought I'd have this," Sarah admits. "After all the violence, all the death, I never thought I'd find peace." "Maybe that's why you were able to," Ethan suggests. "Because you never stopped looking for something better. Never let the darkness claim you completely." Sarah smiles, watching Lucy help a younger student with his stance. "Tom would have loved this. Seeing what his sacrifice helped create." "He sees it," Ethan says with quiet certainty. "Somewhere he knows his choice made all this possible." The ranch has become what they dreamed, a sanctuary for those seeking redemption, a training ground for those wanting to protect rather than destroy. The legend of the Scarlet Viper has transformed too, becoming a story of hope rather than fear. That night, Sarah adds a final entry to her journal, something she started keeping after the battle. "The path of violence is easy to begin, but hard to leave. Each step away from it requires more courage than taking a life ever did. But today I watched former outlaws helping build homes instead of destroying them. Saw young people learning to defend rather than attack. Felt my child move beneath my heart, growing in a world that's slightly better than it was before. The Scarlet Viper isn't dead. She's evolved, like all survivors must. Her teeth are no less sharp, but now they defend instead of destroy. Her venom has become medicine, healing old wounds and preventing new ones. Ethan and I will raise our child in this new world we're helping build. They'll know both peace and strength, gentleness and steel. They'll learn that true courage isn't in defeating enemies, but in helping them become friends. Tom's sacrifice showed us the way. Every life we help change, every person we teach to protect rather than destroy, honors his memory. The battle scars will always remain, but they've become marks of pride rather than shame. We've found our peace at last, not in forgetting the past, but in transforming it, in proving that even the deadliest snake can shed its skin and emerge as something new, something better. The sunset is beautiful tonight. Our home is full of hope, and tomorrow brings another chance to prove that redemption isn't just possible. It's inevitable for those brave enough to choose it. Sarah closes her journal and joins Ethan on the porch. Together, they watch the stars emerge over their transformed home, their hands linked, their hearts at peace. The legend of the Scarlet Viper has found its true ending, not in death or vengeance, but in love and renewal. Tales have a way of growing in the telling, and the story of the Scarlet Viper's last great battle spreads across the territories like wildfire. In saloons and around campfires, people whisper about the pregnant gunslinger who faced down Jed Harper's army, who transformed a gang of outlaws into protectors, who proved that redemption was possible even in the wildest corners of the West. They say she can shoot the flame off a match at 50 paces, a traveler tells his wide-eyed companions at the Willow Creek saloon. Say she taught a whole town to defend itself while carrying a child. Sarah overhears such stories when she visits town, and they make her uncomfortable. They're turning it into some kind of fairy tale, she confides to Ethan one evening. Making me into something I'm not. Maybe, Ethan replies thoughtfully, but the truth is even more remarkable. I watched you build something beautiful from tragedy. That's better than any legend. The McAllister Ranch has become something of a pilgrim's destination. Hardly a week passes without some stranger arriving, hoping to meet the legendary Scarlet Viper. Some seek guidance, others protection, and a few simply want to learn. Sarah greets them all with the same quiet dignity, though she often tries to redirect their attention to more practical matters. You didn't ride all this way to hear old stories, she tells a young man who arrived full of hero worship. But if you're willing to learn about honest work and helping others, you're welcome to stay. Ethan, however, takes genuine pleasure in sharing his wife's accomplishments with visitors. He's developed quite a talent for storytelling, his gentle voice giving weight to tales of Sarah's courage and wisdom. You should have seen her during the battle, he tells a group gathered in their barn during a sudden thunderstorm. 8 months carrying our child, but moving like a force of nature. Not just fighting, but leading, teaching, showing everyone a better way. Sarah pretends to be embarrassed by his stories, but secretly, she loves hearing him tell them. His perspective helps her see her own actions in a different light, understanding how her choices have affected others. The peace they've built is tested when rumors reach them of Buck Hawley, one of Harper's most fanatical followers, stirring up trouble in nearby settlements. He's been telling anyone who'll listen that he's coming to avenge his former boss. Let him come, Ethan says firmly when Sarah mentions the rumors. We're not the same people he remembers, and we're not alone anymore. He's right. The ranch has become a community hub, with former gang members working alongside local youth, all trained in Sarah's methods of defense and protection. The town, too, has changed, developing a quiet confidence that comes from knowing how to stand together against threats. When Hawley finally makes his move, it's almost anticlimactic. He charges into town one morning, drunk and raging, waving his guns and demanding Sarah face him. Sarah, who happens to be in the general store when he arrives, calmly sets down her shopping basket and steps into the street. "Mr. Hawley," she calls out, her voice carrying clearly. "I was wondering when you'd get around to this." "You killed Harper," he screams, his face twisted with grief and hate. "He was like a father to me." "No," Sarah corrects him gently. "He was like a poison in you, like he was in all of us. But you don't have to die for his memory, Buck. There's another way." Hawley's response is to draw his gun, but Sarah's already moving. 2 precise shots, one to disarm, one to disable, and the last of Harper's legacy crumples to the dust. "Someone get the doctor," Sarah orders, already moving to stem the bleeding in Holly's leg. "And when he's healed, he can choose, join us in building something better, or leave these territories forever." The incident only adds to her legend, but not for the reason most would expect. It's not her speed with a gun that people talk about, but her mercy, her offer of redemption even to an enemy. 2 weeks later, Sarah gives birth to a healthy baby girl. They name her Hope, and in her face, they see all the promise of the future they've fought to build. The whole town celebrates, and even gruff Will Hawkins is seen wiping away tears as he holds his goddaughter. "She's got your eyes," Ethan says softly, watching Sarah nurse their daughter. "And hopefully your spirit. And your heart," Sarah adds. "She'll need both to carry on what we've started here." As Hope grows, Sarah notices something special in young Lucy Morton, the sheriff's daughter who's been training with her since the beginning. The girl has not just skill, but wisdom beyond her years, understanding that true strength lies in knowing when not to use force. "You remind me of someone," Sarah tells her during a particularly good training session. "A young man named Tom, who taught me that courage comes in many forms." She begins spending extra time with Lucy, passing on not just techniques, but philosophy, strategy, the deeper truths she's learned about power and responsibility. The girl soaks it all up, adding her own insights that sometimes surprise even Sarah. "It's not just about protecting ourselves, is it?" Lucy asks one day. "It's about protecting what's right, what's worth building." Sarah smiles, hearing echoes of Tom in the girl's words. "That's exactly it. The skills are just tools. It's the heart behind them that matters." The years pass, and Willow Creek transforms under the influence of the McAllister Ranch. The town grows, but not just in size and character. People look out for each other, stand together against threats. The legend of the Scarlet Viper becomes less about gunfighting and more about community, about the power of redemption and second chances. Former outlaws open businesses in town, their violent pasts redeemed by honest work. Sarah's students become teachers themselves, spreading her methods and philosophy to other settlements. The territories begin to change, civilization taking root in the fertile soil of cooperation and mutual protection. Buck Hawley, after recovering from his wounds, chooses to stay. He works in the stable, at first sullen and angry, but gradually finding peace in simple labor and honest community. Years later, he becomes one of the ranch's most devoted defenders. Hope grows into a curious, compassionate child, equally at home helping her father with the horses or watching her mother train students. She knows the stories of her parents' past, but to her, they're simply mom and dad, the center of her safe and loving world. "Tell me about Uncle Tom again," she often begs, sitting on the porch steps while Sarah cleans her guns, a habit she maintains even in peacetime. "He was the bravest person I ever knew," Sarah always begins, and tells again the story of the young man who helped change everything. On a warm evening 10 years after Harper's defeat, Sarah and Ethan sit on their porch, watching Hope play with Lucy's younger siblings in the yard. The setting sun gilds everything in soft light, turning the scene into a living painting. "Did you ever think we'd have this?" Ethan asks, his hand finding Sarah's. "No," she admits. "For so long, I thought my legacy would be written in blood and gun smoke. I never imagined." She gestures to the peaceful scene before them. Hope's laughter rings out as she teaches the younger children a game she's invented, something involving complex rules that only make sense to the young. Lucy, now a confident young woman, watches from nearby, occasionally offering gentle guidance. The ranch has grown, adding new buildings to house students and workers. The training yard echoes with the sound of practice sessions, but also with laughter and conversation. In the distance, the town's church bells ring, calling people to a community gathering. The Scarlet Viper's greatest victory, Ethan muses, wasn't defeating Harper at all, was it? No, Sarah agrees, watching their daughter orchestrate her elaborate game. It was finding the courage to build instead of destroy, to trust and love instead of fear. A rider approaches down the road, another visitor seeking guidance, no doubt. But Sarah doesn't mind anymore. Each person who comes here carries away a piece of the dream they're building, spreading it further across the territories. Mom, Hope calls out, "Come play with us." Dad, too. Sarah and Ethan exchange glances, then rise together. The legend of the Scarlet Viper has evolved into something far greater than one woman's story. It's become a testament to the power of change, of redemption, of love's ability to transform even the darkest past into a bright future. As they join their daughter's game, the setting sun painting the world in shades of promise, Sarah feels the last weight of her violent past fall away. The Scarlet Viper's legacy isn't measured in notches on a gun or enemies defeated, but in lives transformed, in hope restored, in a community built on the foundation of second chances. And in the laughter of children playing without fear, in the sight of former enemies working side by side, in the peaceful prosperity of a town that learned to stand together, Sarah McAllister finds the truest meaning of victory. Not in ending things, but in beginning them. Not in taking life, but in nurturing it. Not in being a legend, but in being simply, completely, wonderfully human. What would you do if you had to choose between the person you were and the person you could become? The Scarlet Viper made her choice, and the territories were never the same. If you enjoyed this tale of redemption and justice in the Old West, make sure to subscribe for more legendary stories that blur the line between hero and outlaw. Hit that like button if you want to hear more about the complicated heroes who shaped the American frontier. And let us know in the comments, do you think Sarah made the right choice in hanging up her guns? Or are there times when the world still needs a vengeful viper? Stay tuned for our next story, where we'll explore another fascinating legend from the untamed territories. Remember, sometimes the most extraordinary tales are hidden behind the most ordinary appearances.